Good morning and welcome to MFO's Lessons Learned, Driving Adoption of Branchless Banking through Consumer Education webinar. Now joining us today for this webinar are Guy Stewart, Executive Director for MFO, who will provide a brief introduction, Revwa Misra, Program Manager at the MasterCard Foundation, who will introduce the Foundation's work on branchless banking. Lastly, Maria Jaramillo, Senior Manager, and Julie Lee, Senior Technical Advisor at MFO will be today's presenters. Following their individual presentations, we will host the question and answer portion of this webinar. We are also happy to have with us today our partners from India and the Philippines. From India, we have Jatinder Handu, Senior Manager of Business Management and Growth from FINO. And from the Philippines, we have Meli Agabin, former Deputy Chief of Party from MABS, Micro Enterprise Access to Banking Services. Jatinder and Meli will be available to participate in the question and answer session. Welcome, Guy.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for joining our webinar this morning on a very exciting topic on consumer education for branchless banking. I'm Guy Stewart. I'm the Executive Director of Microfinance Opportunities. As some of you already know, Microfinance Opportunities, since its founding in 2002, has always championed the consumer's perspective. And we focused on two lines of activity in that regard. One is consumer research. We've developed methodologies around financial diaries and financial capabilities index, as well as traditional survey methodologies and qualitative research methodologies to really understand the financial realities and behaviors of low-income households. Our second line of activity is our financial education or consumer education activities. We've built a global curriculum that is being used worldwide as the basis for a lot of financial education programs implemented by financial service providers and non-profit organizations. And our work on financial education continues, as you'll hear today, with work on branchless banking. Our overall work helps to shape the design and delivery of financial products and services, and we're also, of course, active in helping to shape public policy around financial inclusion, financial education, and understanding the lives of low-income people. Next slide, please. Today we're going to be talking about the Consumer Education for Branchless Banking program. The original objectives of the program were to look at the extent to which consumer education can promote the increased uptake and use of branchless banking, and also how consumer education combined with branchless banking can help low-income people improve their financial well-being. The program was implemented in 3 different countries: in the Philippines, in partnership with MABS, Micro Enterprise Access to Banking Services, a USAID-supported program, and the Rural Bankers Association of the Philippines. In India, we worked in Uttar Pradesh with FINO, which is a business and banking technology platform. And in Zambia, we worked with Zona and also Vision Fund Zambia. And Zona is an electronic payments platform, and Vision Fund is a microfinance institution. For more information on our partner and the role of our partner, I want to hand over now to Revwa Misra, who will talk about the role of the MasterCard Foundation. Over to you, Revwa.
Hi, good morning, everyone. And Guy and Maria, thank you for that introduction, and Maria for that great presentation. So I'm going to speak really briefly about the foundation firstly, but also how the specific project that Maria has described kind of fits into the broader picture of what we are trying to do, of what the foundation is trying to do. So the foundation was set up in 2006, and we work in 2 program areas. The first is financial inclusion, and the second is youth learning. And when we're talking about financial inclusion and thinking about how we can bring those market segments into the fold of financial access who don't otherwise have financial access for a range of reasons, the way we are looking at access is not just about having a savings account. It's about usage. It's about ensuring that people who are sort of increasingly being able to have access our finding services relevant to their livelihoods and are actually being able to use them effectively. And really to sort of give a shout out for microfinance opportunities. I think pretty early in the industry they were pioneering approaches to how can you use financial capability development and consumer research to essentially make, on the one hand, improve usage, but on the other hand also ensure that services are more relevant for clients. And that work translates in a very important way into this evolving space of branchless banking. And I'm really hoping that going forward, some of the lessons that have been learned from the approach around embedded education gets increasingly translated into the way people are thinking about deployments right from the word go. So not to make sort of a division in any way between what education being something different from the way you actually need to deliver a branchless banking service. So this project's been really helpful, I think, in providing a framework and sort of the early documentation experience of engagement around the question of usage and branchless banking.
The focus of our webinar is going to be on four main themes. First of all, we want to identify the problem we're trying to address with this program, which are the challenges in branchless banking. We're going to focus on those challenges from a consumer perspective. The second part of the webinar will focus on the solution that we implemented, the consumer education program. Of course, it's only a partial solution. There are other activities that need to be in place for branchless banking to succeed, but we're going to present some information on why consumer education is a critical component in the solution. We're going to talk about the implementation of consumer education, focusing in on the embedded education methodology that we use in this program, and finally we'll talk about the results of the program. Over to you, Maria.
Thank you, Guy, and good morning to all of you. Let me begin by defining branchless banking. We use CGAP's definition, which states that branchless banking is the provision of financial services outside of conventional bank branches using agents and information and communication technologies, which can include card reading, point-of-sale terminals, or mobile phones to transmit transactional details. The growing number of branchless banking deployments around the world presents a critical opportunity to expand financial inclusion, bringing the unbanked populations into the formal financial system. The State of the Industry report recently published by GSMA indicates that in 2013, there were 219 mobile money deployments around the world in 84 countries. However, the challenge of scale remains. In 2013, only 13 of them had reached scale, which is defined by GSMA as having 1 million active customers. Acquiring and maintaining active customers is key. By 2013, only 29.9% of registered accounts were active, and only 1/3 of respondents had more than 100 active accounts. Therefore, identifying what is needed to effectively support the adoption of branchless banking has become an imperative. We take Everett Rogers' theory of adoption of new innovations as a framework. We have distilled it here into 4 key phases that we believe apply to branchless banking, which are awareness, understanding, trial, and regular use. The key lesson learned on the demand side or the client side that we have identified through our market research is that trust that the system will work and confidence in using the system need to be progressively built throughout this adoption process. Branchless banking services are difficult to talk about and explain and not as intuitive to understand as we might think. In the awareness phase, we identified that customers had a difficult time understanding what the product is about and how it works, if it is for them or for a more wealthier audience. Customers had misconceptions, and they try to understand this new technology by associating it with products that they were familiar with. For example, in the Philippines, they asked if a mobile wallet was like having an account. Would it have a monthly maintenance fee? Or would it behave like airtime? Would their money in the wallet expire at the end of the month like airtime does? In the understanding phase, there was a limited trust in the system, which was due to customers' limited understanding of the safety features of the service, meaning how to manage and how does the PIN work and how to manage it so that it keeps their money safe. Customers were also not comfortable with the way in which the system confirms that your transactions were successful. They were used to a cash-based society and paper receipts, so they didn't see an SMS confirmation as a receipt. In the trial phase, customers had a limited understanding of what were the steps needed to transact, and therefore lacked the confidence to use the service on their own, and at times were relying on merchants to do the transactions on their behalf. And then in the regular use phase, we identified that customers lacked the knowledge and the skills to manage operational issues and challenges that they could face while transacting. On the supply side, the challenges that we identified included the assumptions that tended to be made about the customer and their financial reality. We found that when these assumptions were then used in the design of the transaction flow, they could lead to critical breakdowns in the system. So for example, in Zambia, when Zona partnered with Vision Fund, the microfinance institution, to disperse loans through their real-time payments platform and network of agents. The system assumed that customers had a phone and that they were using it regularly. However, in the rural areas, we identified that some customers were mainly using their cell phone to receive that SMS, which indicated to them the agent location where they had to go, the time and place to go to pick up their loan disbursement. Throughout the remaining period of their loan, they didn't use their SIM or their phone, and as a result, their SIM became inactive. That led to a breakdown in the system, as in their next cycle, they were not receiving the SMS that indicated to them when and where they needed to go to pick up their next loan disbursement. So as a result, this assumption created a difficult experience with the system for the customer. A second assumption was that it was important to map the back office processes as well as the process that the agent had to go through with the system, and that mapping the front office or the process that the customer would have to go through was less of a priority. When we mapped this process with our partner, we identified how complex some of the steps were that the customer needed to carry out, and this helped us to identify the key pieces of information that we needed to ensure the customer was aware of and understood to effectively transact. So this assumption would have prevented us from getting into that deep understanding of the customer's needs. A third example was the assumption that the information received in an SMS would be sufficient for the customer to carry out the transaction. We identified with our partner that customers were not understanding the purpose and the information sent in the SMSs. And as a result, they were not able to see and understand the role that they needed to play in the system for it to successfully work. Setting up a successful branchless banking deployment is complex. It is difficult to have a perfect design. They're moving pieces. There's a technology platform, the regulatory framework, the interface between the telco and the microfinance institution, the management of your network of agents, the right location of your agents. We have seen that these complex elements of a deployment tend to absorb most of the attention, the time and resources of providers. And what tends to happen is that the customer, their financial reality, how they experience the service tends to be paid less attention to or given second priority. So we understand the difficulties in putting together a perfect branchless banking deployment because of these moving pieces. And we think that even if we use a consumer-centered approach, which is the focus of our work, or if you use a human-centered design, that there are trade-offs that you as providers are having to make as you put these deployments in action. There are trade-offs between the available technology, the desired design, and the funds that your customers are currently using, for example. So because of these complexities in the design, and because of the second priority that customers' perspectives tend to have, as well as the demand-side challenges that we just discussed, we believe that adding a consumer education component for both customers and frontline staff can bring value to your branchless banking deployment. This is our definition of financial capabilities, and it is based on literature review as well as on the work that MFO has been carrying over this past 12 years. We define financial capabilities around knowledge and skills, but also around attitudes and self-efficacy that can help clients make informed decisions within an enabling environment and to access appropriate financial services. So we have a poll question that we're going to ask you at this point. Do you provide consumer education to your customers? We'll give you a couple of seconds to answer it, and we'll give you the answer in a couple of slides. Okay. Go back to slide. Next slide, please. So we think that the value that financial capability can bring is that it is like making a long-term investment in both your customers and your frontline staff. And we think of an investment because a capable consumer can make informed choices, have a more satisfying trial experience, and have the skills and confidence to successfully use your service. With this investment made, the next time that you introduce a new feature or service, or if you need to adjust your transaction steps, customers can then leverage those capabilities to more effectively adapt to these changes, learn and adopt new services. So we believe that supporting customers through this first learning curve with financial capabilities can then help them in their next learning process. For example, for more complex products so that this process can be more feasible and manageable. Next slide. We believe that the combination of these two elements is crucial for the successful deployment of branchless banking services. That is, first of all, the use of a consumer-focused approach or a human-centered design. And secondly, to complement that, the use of financial capabilities, both for your customers and your frontline staff, and that this combination can ensure that you're bringing your customer's perspective and experiences to the center of the planning and implementation of your branchless banking deployments.
Right now I wanted to take a moment to go over the poll results that from the question that Maria asked everyone here. Do you provide consumer education to your customers? And we're very happy to see that 78% of you listening do in fact provide consumer education. That's great to hear. All right, now we're going to take a look at the approach that MFO took in designing the the consumer education strategies. In developing our approach to consumer education, we looked at three critical challenges that institutions commonly face in developing and delivering effective consumer education programs. First, consumer education, we recognize, is an investment. Beyond the initial cost of developing it, how can we continue to implement it in a sustainable way so that it is not just a one-time offering? Related to this is the challenge of scale. How can the consumer education reach more customers? And finally, we recognize that consumer education is not the core business of financial institutions and branchless banking service providers. So there are competing demands on the bandwidth of the organizations and the staff, and also that the staff may lack the capacity and the skills to deliver education effectively. With these challenges in mind, we decided to take an embedded approach to consumer education. We wanted to start to look beyond traditional training in the sense of bringing together a group of people or in a classroom or a workshop for the sole purpose of providing consumer education. This traditional training often has demands on the time of the consumers, the organization's staff, and on top of that, the expenses that are associated with these workshops. And more importantly, there are fewer chances to immediately apply what the consumers learn in this education. So embedded education looks at existing points of interaction or service encounters between the institution and the consumer. And it uses these contact points in order to incorporate consumer education. Leveraging these contact points provides an opportunity to apply the consumer education that they've received within a financial context, such as prior to a transaction. The comparative advantage of an embedded education is that because you're using these existing infrastructures within an institution, instead of building new ones, you can lower costs and increase the potential for going to scale. Embedded education is different from marketing and choice architecture in the sense that the supply side is pushing or nudging the consumer to a specific behavior. With embedded education, we're assuming a level of interaction between the consumer and the institution. And there's a focus on pedagogical values such as empowerment and critical thinking, which lead to a more financially capable consumer. We should note here, though, that we don't think that marketing or choice architecture and consumer education are mutually exclusive. Rather, we think that the three can enhance or complement each other in the program. Finally, embedded consumer education is important in the sense that it's integrated into the organization's culture. The education becomes institutionalized within an organization and in its operations. Let's look more closely at what an embedded consumer education strategy could look like. Here we're showing you a basic model of a service delivery. Here we see the provider, the client, and an encounter between the provider and the client, which we call a contact point. Embedded education builds on this basic model of service delivery, but it changes and enriches the nature of the encounter with education. The client is more actively engaged. We tested the embedded education strategies in our 3 projects. We'll take a look here at our project in Zambia. There we worked with Vision Fund to train their loan officers to deliver 20-minute sessions on 2 things: the branchless banking service that clients would use to collect and repay their loans, and second, money management. These 20-minute sessions were then added to the existing monthly loan group meetings that clients attended with their loan officers. During these meetings, consumer education tools were provided so that the loan officers had a set of posters to train with, and also clients had activity books to practice and share what they learned at home. The second contact point that we used in the Zambia project was with the branchless banking service provider, Zona. Zona agents were trained on delivering 5-minute messages that were focused on the Zona service. This reinforced what the clients had already learned from the loan officers at the group meetings. So when loan groups went to collect their loans, they received these 5-minute reinforcement messages about the steps for the transaction. And during these reinforcement trainings, agents used a set of posters and another tool which we were calling counter sheets to deliver these refresher messages. clients were then able to apply what they learned immediately to the actual transaction, which here is collecting their loan. In developing and testing the embedded consumer education program, we're cognizant of the challenges that come with relying on frontline staff and agents to deliver consumer education. We're going to take a quick poll question here and ask our participants here, are you currently leveraging agents or merchants to train your customers? We'll just take a few few seconds here and get your answers. Can I get the results? So right now, from the results, we see that 54% are currently using agents or merchants, and 46% are not. Okay, that's great, good to know. So for us, when we were doing this embedded consumer education programs, we knew that there were challenges that we were going to face using staff and agents. First, their capability to deliver the training. We understand that frontline staff and agents are not trainers, and moreover, they have limited amount of time to deliver consumer education. And third, since consumer education is not a core function of their job, this would affect their level of motivation to deliver consumer education. What we learned from the frontline staff and agents in our 3 projects, what we learned from leveraging them, was that first, it's important to design the consumer education so that it's aligned with supporting them to do their jobs. So for example, if a loan officer is looking to reduce the number of defaults among his or her loan groups, or if an agent wants to increase the number of transactions at his shop, consumer education can provide them with the training and the tools to help them achieve these goals. The more value that the staff and the agents can see that consumer education brings them to their jobs, brings them at their jobs, the greater buy-in we can see from them. The second lesson we learned was that it's important to help them recognize the crucial role that they play within a broader strategy. An embedded education program has multiple touch points, contact points, and other groups of actors that are delivering consumer education, which means that the success of the consumer education doesn't rely on just one group of actors or just one contact point. The third lesson learned was that we think it's important to give the staff and the agents a defined role within the strategy. For example, a specific phase in the strategy. In our projects, we had 4 components: awareness raising, direct training, practice, or the application of the education, and reinforcement. And within these components, the staff and the agents had clearly defined roles. At this point, let me turn over to Guy to discuss the results from our consumer education projects.
So as Maria noted when she was talking about some of the challenges of branchless banking, there were a number of operational challenges that these services that we worked with faced. And so it was often difficult to parse out the impact of consumer education on the behavior of the target populations that we were working with. Nevertheless, our analysis of the results of the program suggested from the qualitative data that there was, across the board in all 3 countries, an increased customer understanding of the branchless banking service, and that customers expressed that they had greater trust and confidence to use the branchless banking service successfully. One of the very interesting findings from the qualitative research was also the fact that credit officers, frontline staff, agents and merchants all expressed the benefits that they got from the consumer education They felt that they were better equipped to explain the service to their customers, that it provided them with a systematic approach for doing so, and it was a level of training that they received that they didn't necessarily receive in the ordinary course of business. So the qualitative data suggests quite strongly that there was some real impact of the education on both frontline staff, merchants, and also customers. In terms of the quantitative data, our most robust findings were from Zambia, where we implemented a quiz at the start and the end of our project, and we saw improvement in knowledge of participants. They showed a statistically significant improvement on 6 of 12 questions asked at baseline and endline. And then again in Zambia, we looked at the data from the Vision Fund's management information systems, and we saw a pattern where people who had taken part in the program were likely to request smaller loan amounts in or smaller increases in loan amounts in their next round of loans than those who did not participate in the program. That's a little bit of a complicated result, so let me try and explain it again. For those who did participate in the program, they asked for less of an increase in their loan amount the next time they went for a loan, as opposed to someone who didn't participate in the program, and it was 13% less. And this suggests that they took into account the curriculum that we delivered around debt management, which is that you need to ensure that you can that the debt that you take on is something that you can manage, rather than just going for the maximum loan amount that you can get. So those were the results from the program. I want to ask you to stay tuned. There's going to be more coming out of this project in the future. We've got case studies and videos on the 3 projects. We've also got a market research and paper and a final synthesis report that we've written and are almost ready to publish. And we have an online course and toolkit that is available on our website. And to talk about the online course and toolkit, I'm handing over to Dina Yunus, our intern, who will guide you through that. Over to you, Dina.
Thank you, Guy. Before we start, I would like to encourage you to send our questions to us. Just feel free to use the question window, and we will be happy to answer your questions. Okay, so MFO used this valuable lessons learned to design a course that supports Branchless banking providers to incorporate consumer education as part of their adoption strategies for mobile banking and electronic cards. The target audience for the course are mid-level staff of MFIs and NGOs. The Consumer Education for Branchless Banking course is also designed for mobile money providers that are in charge of managing customer or frontline staff training, consumer education, or marketing initiatives for Branchless Banking. The course pursues 3 main objectives. First, to demonstrate the value of a consumer-centric approach for consumer education for Branchless Banking, to examine the challenges of adoption of Branchless Banking and solutions that consumer education can provide. And the third, to explore a roadmap and tools for how to develop a consumer education Branchless Banking program. The course is structured in 8 modules. Each module supports the learner in designing and building a consumer education strategy. Course participants are provided access to a suite of course materials, strategy development tools, background reading, and sample resources. And this slide shows an example of how the Consumer Education Branchless Banking course looks like. Our online professional development portal offers on-demand courses enabling self-paced independent learning. It equips individuals or professional teams to learn new skills or build on existing knowledge. Participants learn on their own pace by navigating through PowerPoints, which transmit the key message of each module. On the right side of the page, participants can test their knowledge and reinforce key ideas by going through engaging exercises in the workbooks provided. Practical tools are offered so that participants can then build progressively, module by module, the key components of a consumer education strategy. Further, the online training course provides users with background readings and additional resources. So if you would like to have more information about the course, click on the link and visit our professional development portal. We welcome you to download our welcome workbook and the consumer education Branchless banking course content. So now we would like to open the discussion for questions. So please feel free to use your question window to write us your question. We will do your best to answer all of them.
What was the methodology of the qualitative data? We used focus groups and in-depth interviews with consumers who went through the program, and also with credit officers, frontline staff, agents and merchants who participated in the program.
Another question that participants might have is about the use of marketing and nudges and consumer education, and how can they complement each other. For our projects, we were focused, a primary focus of our project was driving usage of the branchless banking service, and a lot of our partners had already conducted marketing campaigns. So the consumer education program was really brought in to help increase the usage of the services. So for example, in the Philippines, we developed a set of posters that would complement what MABS, our partner in the Philippines, had already done. And also we developed a starter kit for the bank officers at the rural banks to be able to explain to the clients who are about to sign up for the service what the service was about, how to transact. And then we also provided nudges. Clients received tips about saving and how savings can help them, and which reminded them to deposit money through the mobile money service. I'd like to turn it over to Melly here from the Philippines, and maybe Melly can add.
Well, maybe the best way for me to contribute after, was it Julie who spoke last? After Julie described the tools that were deployed after we partnered with MFO to develop the consumer education tools and messages for rural banks. I think the best way for me is to provide a contrast on how we did it at the beginning, before our partnership with MFO. And we thought that, you bring all the clients together and give them some hands-on experience, and that's it. But we were, of course, disappointed that the active use wasn't taking off as we expected. And with the consumer education tools that were developed, there were clients where I didn't realize that we were mapping the interaction or the encounter points. And on hindsight, I said, why, it really made sense that, we were having those small tabletop messages in front of the, on the desk of the new accounts clerk, because we were trying to promote the deposit products for small depositors in our partner rural banks. And so there is one on top of the desk of the new accounts clerk. There is a another one, a standee on the teller's in front of the teller's desk. And there are posters and messages in the cash in, cash out points. And so that's I realized that this is really embedding the education for consumers. And instead of, one chunky upfront training where after that there's hardly any follow-up, this one continues to enforce the messages to clients. And the rural bank partners that were very diligent about following up and training their frontline staff, well, they did show very good results. And there is a video about First Valley Bank, and I think if those interested could take a look at that video, because there is a significant difference in the consumer behavior and usage of the consumers, of the clients that received such consumer education materials.
Thank you very much, Melly, for those insights. Thank you. We have
You're welcome.
A couple of questions that we want to answer. Some of you have asked us what is the most impactful and useful type of materials when providing education to consumers. One of the tools that we have used is a flipbook for frontline staff or agents that they can use, and we have found it to be effective as it's portable, and it enables the frontline staff or agent to display it and use it as an aid, as a visual aid, as they explain a concept to the customer. So on one side of the tool you have an image or an illustration, and on the other side you have the text or the speech that you want your staff to provide and talk about. And we've seen that they've had a good uptake because it helped the frontline staff systematize and have a more consistent way of explaining things to the customer together with the visuals. Another question is about the time that it would take to implement this type of consumer education programs. The current pilots that we implemented had a learning agenda as part of it. So as we were implementing, we were documenting and learning and documenting lessons learned. But we estimate that on average, the market research phase, then the analysis, the design of the consumer education materials, we recommend piloting before rolling it out. It could take between 5 to 7 months. That's our estimation.
Mm-hmm.
Let me pass it over to Julie so she can answer other questions.
Other questions that we have, what were the costs involved for the partners to implement consumer education, and were they subsidized? That's a good question. And this project was a learning project, and we were testing consumer education for branchless banking. We were fortunate to have the partnership with the MasterCard Foundation and to be able to provide some subsidization or funds to our partners in the Philippines, Zambia, and India to be able to develop the trainings and the tools and devise a strategy. So the costs would be different here than a typical project that would involve only a branchless banking service provider. Another question that we have is, to what extent did the providers change their front-end processes based on your research? What were some examples? I think what our projects helped to do was again, from what Maria had said earlier in her presentation, was that it emphasized or highlighted to the providers that the process from the consumer side was not so simple, the transaction process. And that kind of information, I think, made them rethink how effective that their platforms were. Our partners in Zambia used this information, I think, and then also they saw the value in the consumer education program, and that they hope to continue using these tools that we gave their agents to be able to explain their other branchless banking services. I'm now going to turn it over to Maria.
Thank you. There's a question about the business case for partners to take on a long-term delivery of the service. I'm not sure if of the branchless banking or of the consumer education, but the business case for consumer education, we think, can be based on the changes in knowledge and skills that we saw in the program, as well as the changes in attitude. So we saw that there was a change in the foundation of these capabilities that can lead to behavior change. As Guy mentioned, we had challenges with the deployments themselves that limited our assessment in behavior change. But in the Philippines, we saw small, positive but modest results that customers that were exposed to consumer education, in the branch where customers were exposed to consumer education, there was a greater number of activity of active users.
I think I would now like to thank you all for your participation in today's webinar. We're sorry that we're out of time now, but we do encourage you to email any questions that we weren't able to answer today. You can email us directly at our email addresses, which are up on the screen. And thank you again for joining us.